Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back to part 2 of this How to Make an iPhone Game series. So in this second part here, we're going to look at actually having our UFO enemy move across the top of the screen back and forth, and then he's going to start firing down to our ground in our cannon. But before we do that, I actually forgot something from part 1, and it's in our fire script here, so I'm going to open it up. And uh, two things I actually forgot is the first is some kind of fire sound. So I'm going to create an outlet up here, so public audio source, and I'm going to call it gun sound. And then when we actually are shooting our cannon, we can come down here and we can just say gun sound dot play with a capital P, just like that. And then in the inspector, we can actually assign this audio source in a minute. And then the second thing that I forgot was some kind of fire rate here. So I did it off camera, but yours should look like input.get button down. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just remove this down part. And what this will allow us to do is it's just going to allow you to hold in the fire button without continually pushing it. And then we have to give it some kind of fire rate. So I'm going to come up here and say public float fire rate. And I'm going to default it to 2. And I'm also going to create one more float, and I'm going to call it next time to shoot, and I'm going to default that to 0. And then down in this if statement inside of our shoot method, we can say if we're pressing the shoot button or the jump button in our case, and time is greater than or equal to next time to shoot, and I need to add a closing bracket right there. And let's see, actually, whoops, I need data right here. And then down inside of here, we can just say next time to shoot is equal to time, and then plus 1 divided by our fire rate. So this might be a little confusing at first, but what this is checking is if we're pushing our shoot button and the time that's passed, so time is greater than or equal to the next time to shoot. So at the very beginning, it is going to be equal to, or it's going to be greater than or equal to. So we're going to be able to shoot on the very first time. And then we're going to set that next time to shoot variable equal to the time that's passed plus 1 divided by our fire rate. So when this is greater than 1 or 1 or greater than 1 basically is when you're going to be able to shoot. So if you would lower this fire rate, you're going to shoot slower, and if you would increase it, you're going to shoot faster. But now if we save our script here and we go back inside of MonoDevelop, or I'm sorry, inside of Unity, now we could actually press our fire button and it will shoot at that fire rate. So I'll run it. Whoops. So let's actually click on our cannon, and we need to add an audio source. And I'm going to click on the drop down button, and I'm going to uncheck play on awake because we don't want it to play right when the game starts. And then I just found this Canon sound online, but you can use any clip you'd like. And then you're going to drag it into this audio clip right here, and I'm going to close this component. And then I'm just going to drag in this audio source into this gun slot right here. And now if we press play, you should see that it works correctly. And now we can shoot at a rate of 2 bullets per second. And I'll show you here if we come into the inspector and we just turn this up to something like 15, you can see that it shoots a lot more bullets. And if we turn it down to 0.5, you can see it shoots much slower. And the whole time there I was holding down the fire button. So I just wanted to clear that up from the first part, but let's actually get into the second part here and tackle the things that we're going to. So I'm first going to hop into our sprites folder down here, and I'm going to go into shooters, and I have this UFO sprite, and like I said, it's all going to be in the download or in the description box if you want to get this. And I'm going to open the sprite editor, and all I did here is I just took this animation right here, so these 3 sprites, and I just applied it again, and I have this. And let's see here. Yeah, we're going to use probably these first 3. I did all 7 of them, but we're going to use these first 3. You can use any of them that you would like, but I'm just going to highlight all of them and drag them into the hierarchy. And by default, Unity is going to create an animation for us, so I'm just going to call this UFO anim, and I'm just going to save that. And now we have the animation here, and we also have this controller, so I'm going to just rename the controller to UFO controller. And so now I'm going to go back into assets, and then I'm going to right click and just create a folder, and I'm going to call it animations. And this is just to keep it organized. So I'm going to go back into the sprites here, back into shooters, click on both of these, and then just drag them into our animations folder here. So then they're right there. So now we have our UFO sprite here, and let's see where it placed it. It's right there. We just need to adjust the layer. So let's put it layer 1. And let's see here. It's a little small, so I'm going to maybe bump it up to 2 by 2, and that looks alright. And I'm going to rename it just to UFO. And for now, I think that's all we need. So I'm going to come down here and create a new script, and this is going to handle the back and forth motion and also the shooting of the UFO. So I'm going to call it UFO move, something like that. And I'm going to click it to open it up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create some variables. The first thing we want to get is some kind of end position of the UFO, so the point that he's trying to get to, and then return. So I'm going to say public transform far end point, and then I'm also going to create a private vector3 variable, and I'm going to call this something like from point, and then I'm going to create another vector3, and I'm going to say 2 point or something like that. I don't really know a good name for that, but you can call it whatever you'd like, just the point that it's trying to go to. And now I'm going to create a float variable called seconds. Let's just say seconds for length. And I'm going to default that to something like 5. And for now, that's all I'm going to do. We're going to have a couple more when we're actually going to get to shooting our gun. But then we're going to come down here inside of our start method, and we're going to say from point is equal to transform dot position. So basically just where we're coming from is going to be equal to the UFO's start position. And then I'm going to say 2 point is equal to far end point dot position. And what this is doing is it's setting the point that the UFO is trying to get to on the other side to a certain game object's position. And we're going to set that in the inspector. That's why I made it public right here. Okay, so now that we have that, we can come down inside of our update method, and it's pretty simple. It's going to be confusing at first, but it's just really one line basically. Excuse me. So transform.position is equal to vector3.lerp, and inside of here I'm going to call from point, 2 point, and then I can say mathf dot smooth step, and then inside of here I'm going to say 0, 1, and then I'm going to say mathf dot ping pong, and then what this is going to do is going to say time dot time divided by seconds for length, and then 1f. So what this is doing is it's taking our UFO's position and it's lerping it. So lerp is just basically a method that Unity's created for us, and it's just gonna smooth step. So that's another method, and it's just gonna bounce back and forth smoothly between these 2 points. And then the ping pong just sets the time that it's gonna bounce back and forth, and that time is gonna be the time that's passed divided by how long it takes for one length, so that's 5, and then we just have the length at the end, so I just put it to 1. So if we save it and we come back into Unity, we're going to first drag our script onto our UFO, so we're going to click UFO, move, And now you can see that we need to add the far endpoint. So I'm going to right click and create empty. And I'm coming into the scene view here. And I'm just going to drag the point to like there maybe. And I'm going to say endpoint. Now I'm going to drag the UFO up to the top of the screen and all the way to the right. And now for this far endpoint, I'm just going to drag in this endpoint here and hit run. And now you see he has some sort of animation. It looks a little weird. You can adjust that like I said. But he's just bouncing back and forth between the start position, which was about right here, and that second point that we put over here. And you can see that the points aren't exactly aligned or parallel with each other. So he's going on a slight decline. So you could adjust that however you want. If you want to make them exactly the same, just put the Y positions exactly identical. But that's good enough for now. I'm not going to get too particular with it. So I'm going to go back into the script here, and now we're actually going to get some kind of shoot feature for our UFO. So I'm going to create a method, and I'm going to come down here and say void shoot. And inside of here, I'm just going to, this is where we're going to check if a certain time has passed, because we're not actually going to control the UFO. It's going to shoot by itself. So I need to come up here and create a couple variables, and it's going to be very similar to what we just did in the beginning of the video. So public float fire rate, and I'm going to set that equal to 0.5. Public float next time to shoot, and that's equal to 0 again. And for now that's it. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say if time is greater than or equal to next time to shoot. Then if it is, I'm going to say next time to shoot is equal to time plus 1 divided by our fire rate. Okay, so I'm not going to explain that again. We just covered that in the beginning. So after we do that, we're going to instantiate our missile. And we don't have the sprite created for that, but we'll do that in a second. So I'm going to say game object missile, and that's going to be equal to instantiate. And now we need to instantiate our missile. So I'm going to come up here and create a variable for that. So game object missile. And I made it public so you can put it in the inspector. And now we want to instantiate the missile. And we want to instantiate it at the UFO's position. So game object with the lowercase g dot transform dot position. And we want to give it the same rotation. So game object dot transform dot rotation. And then now since we have this variable that's equal to our clone of our missile, we can say missile dot get component, and I'm going to say rigid rigid body 2D dot velocity is equal to negative transform dot up times I'll give another variable, so missile speed, and I'll come up here and say public float missile speed is equal to 15. So what this is doing is if we're allowed to shoot, we're going to create this missile object, and it's going to instantiate the missile at our game object's current position, so the UFO's current position and the UFO's current rotation. And then it's going to take that instantiated object, or that clone of the object, and it's going to get the rigid body 2D on that object, and it's going to set its velocity to a downwards velocity times 15. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go into Unity here, and I'm just going to let it think for a minute. And what we need to do now is I'm actually going to just show you again how we can get our missile that's going to fire. So if we go into sprite and we go into bullets, and it should be right here on this sprite sheet. So I just drug out the missiles here and they're right here. So I'm going to highlight both of them, drag them into the hierarchy. Again, Unity will create the animation for us. I'm going to say missile anim and just create that. I'm going to rename this controller, so missile controller, and I'm going to highlight both of them and drop them in that animations folder. And now we can click on our missile here and change the layer to 1. I'm also going to go into game view here, and I'm probably going to bump this up to maybe let's try 5 by 5, or how about, alright, so 3 by 3 looks pretty good. And now we need to give it a rigid body 2D. I'm going to turn the gravity scale down to 0 because that velocity will just work on it. And I'm just going to rename it to missile. And then I'm going to go into here and I'm just going to drag it into our assets to create the prefab. And I'm going to delete this missile. And I'm going to click on our UFO here, and now we need to set our missile. So I'm going to drag and drop that prefab. And I think there actually is one thing that we need to do here, but you'll see here in a second. So he's going to go along, and when he hits that certain fire rate, he's going to start shooting. Or it would help if we actually called that method, but it doesn't matter. I'll show you here. So I just need to call it in the update method. And also, since our sprite here is pointing upwards and we need to have the missile come down, we actually need to rotate it. So we're going to come back inside of here, and we're just going to take this missile, and before we add the velocity to it, we're going to say missile dot transform dot rotate, and we want to rotate it. Let me think about it here. We want to rotate it 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and 180 on the Z. And that should work, so let's save it. So as you can see, it's shooting the missile there. Obviously the missile is really fast. If you want to make it something similar to what I had in my demo, you can change it to something like 1 or even smaller than 1, so 0.5, and you can see that they'll go really slow here. And the point of this game is it's an endless type game, so you never want the game to just be stagnant. So we need to give some kind of variable for our missile speed to increase and also the fire rate to increase over time. So I'm going to come back inside of our UFO move scripts here, and I'm going to create another variable, and I'm going to call this one I'm going to say public void increase fire rate, and then I can say I'm going to come up here and say public float fire rate increase time, and that's going to be equal to 0. And actually, instead of 0, I'm going to maybe put it like 20. And now I'm going to come down inside of our method here, and I'm going to say if time dot time is greater than or equal to fire rate increase time. Well, then if it is, I can say fire rate plus equals 0.1. And also I'm going to say missile speed plus equals 0.1. And then I can say fire rate increase time plus equals 20. Okay, so basically what this is doing, every 20 seconds in our case here with this variable, it's going to call what's inside of this if statement, and in this case it's going to increase both the fire rate and our missile speed by 0.1 each, and then it's just going to add 20 to that time, so it's not going to continuously add to these variables. And in our case, I'm going to come up here and I changed the missile speed to 0.5, and that way it starts out really slow, and then over time both the UFO and the missile speed get faster and faster. So if I save that and we go back into here, and I'm going to come in the inspector, and I'm going to change this to 2, just so every 2 seconds it's a little easier to see. But watch both of this, the fire rate here and also this missile speed, they should increase by 0.1 every 2 seconds. So let's take a look. So it's going, and I keep forgetting, I'm sorry about that, guys. Got to call it in the update method, increase fire rate. So now when we run it every 2 seconds, you can see now it's up to 0.6. And instead of this 20 actually down here, I'm just going to make this another variable so we can just play around with it in the inspector for testing purposes. So public float time to add, and I'm just going to say 20. And then I can come down here and remove this and just say time to add and save that. And now if we come in here and give it a minute to think, now you can see in the inspector here we have a couple more things that we can play around with. So this time to add, I'm just going to set this to 2 for now. And also the fire rate increase time I'm going to set to 2, just so every 2 seconds instead of waiting for 20. In our case it's going to be a lot easier. So let's run it. And if you watch both the fire rate here and the missile speed, you should see every 2 seconds they increase to 0.6 and then to 0.7 and so on. So you get the idea, and then that's how you can give some kind of dynamic feel to your game over time. These are going to get much faster, and you can see already that they're getting really fast. You can, but to make it however fast you want it to, I would say maybe something like 30 and 30, and that'll just adjust that to every 30 seconds, so it'll get harder. So I think the last thing we're going to do in this video is just tackle when we actually shoot our missile, we can destroy these when we actually shoot our bullets, it can destroy those missiles that are being shot at us. So I'm going to drag in our bullet here into the hierarchy just so we can add a box collider to it. So add a box collider 2D, and I'm going to come on and click onto the bullet. And let's just make sure the box collider looks good, and it does. So I'm going to apply, and then I can delete this. And I'm going to create another script. I'm going to call it bullet damage. And this is going to be a very simple script, so we're going to open it up. And the only method we're going to call in here is a method that's created for us. So on collision enter 2D. So up here inside of right here we have this parameter, and it's looking for a collision 2D, and it's called collision. So we're going to check if that collision and the collider on that collision and the tag on that collider is equal to missile. And if it is, we're going to just destroy that collision's game object. So we don't even need to put this in update method. This is continuously checked for by default. So it's checking for this collision variable, like I said, and if that collision variable is collider, so that box collider, if its tag is missile, it's going to destroy the missile. So I'm going to save it, and what we need to do now is we just need to click on our missile here, and we have no box collider on it currently at the moment. So we just need to add another box collider 2D, and that should be good to go. And also I'm going to add the tag, and I'm going to create the tag missile and save that, and then just click on that missile and make sure you give it the tag of missile. And let's see here, click on bullet, and we just need to add bullet damage, and we should be good to go. So if we go run the game now and we shoot and hit one of those missiles coming down at us, it should destroy it. And let's see here. So there you go. And I think also what we'd want to do is, it depends on what kind of game you're making, but we'd probably also want to destroy the bullet. Once the bullet hits the missile, we probably want to destroy both the bullet and the missile. So this call destroy game object, and if we run again, you can see now when we shoot and we hit the missile, it'll destroy both of them. So you can play around with that. If you'd want to have some kind of feature where you could potentially go through, you might want to not destroy it, but for our game here, we're going to destroy it. And that's it, guys, for part 2. Like I said, in part 3, we're going to probably take a look at implementing some kind of health for both the ground and the players, add some kind of UI eventually, and the menus, and that'll be about it for this game. Thanks for watching. Give a sub if you like the content, and I'll catch you next time.